Enlarge the 15-inch Surface Book 2. Introduced a little over 2 years ago, Microsoft's Surface Book was the hybrid laptop that I had long hoped the company would build. Like the Surface Pro, it worked as a true standalone tablet, but it had the all-important stiff hinge, making it suitable for use on your lap in a way that the Surface Pro's kickstand and type covers never really supported. The Surface Book was not just a useful form factor, it was also something of a technological showcase. Other hybrid designs I've used, such as the ThinkPad Helix, had clunky mechanical linkages between the tablet portion and the base. The Surface Book boasted a clever software-controlled system. The fulcrum hinge design, which helped keep the device balanced when the screen was open, is elegant and visually striking. And to top it all off, the Surface Book came with an optional discrete GPU, with the GPU housed not in the tablet part but in the base. While we've seen many systems with switchable graphics using the low-power integrated GPU, unless you're playing a game is similar and need the full power of the discrete chip, having the discrete GPU be in a separate component was an exciting twist. Specs at a glance: Microsoft Surface Book 2 15 best reviewed screen 3240 x 216015260 ppi 10-point capacitive pixel sense touchscreen OS Windows 10 Pro CPU Intel 8th generation Core i7-8650U RAM 16GB 1866 MHz LPDDR3 GPU Intel UHD graphics 620 NVIDIA GTX 1060 with 6GB GDDR5 SSD 256GB PCIe 1TB PCIe networking 802.11 AC ABGN with 2x2 MIMO antennas, Bluetooth 4.1 ports, 2 USB 3.1 Generation 1 Type A, 1 USB 3.1 Generation 1 Type A with power delivery, SD, 3.5mm headset cameras, rear 8MP autofocus, 1080p video, front 5MP, 1080p video, infrared facial recognition, size 13.5 x 9.87 x 0.570.90, 343 x 251 x 1523 mm, weight 4.2 pounds, 1.91 kilograms, battery 22 Wh, tablet 62 Wh, base warranty 1 year, price $2,499, $3,299, senses ambient light sensor, accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer, charger 95W. Other features: support Surface Pen, Surface Dial, TPM 2.0, Xbox Wireless. Surface Book was an early adopter of Intel's then new Skylake chips. But a year after its launch, when most OEMs were refreshing the Skylake systems with Kaby Lake processors, Microsoft didn't. Kaby Lake offered some nice improvements in clock speeds and power efficiency, but rather than bump the Surface Book line with the new chips, Microsoft instead introduced the performance base. The tablet portion was unchanged, but the performance base had a faster discrete GPU and an enormous battery. Even when the Surface Pro 4, released concurrently with the Surface Book, was replaced by the Kaby Lake 2017 Surface Pro, the Surface Book kept its Skylake chips, twice the cores, and an enormous GPU upgrade. While Microsoft may have skipped one cycle of processor updates, it hasn't abandoned the Surface Book, and it hasn't skipped the latest 8th generation Kaby Lake chips. These chips doubled the number of cores and threads to 4 and 8 respectively, and for the right applications they can provide a hefty boost to performance. The new Surface Book 2 also includes a substantial upgrade to the optional discrete GPU, from NVIDIA's 900 series in the 2015 model to a 1000 series GPU. Most significant of all, Microsoft is doubling down on Surface Book's laptop credentials with a new size. Surface Book 2 now has two screen options. As with the first generation, there's a 13.5-inch 3000 x 2000 display, but that is now joined by a 15-inch 3240 x 2160 screen. The 15-inch version is only available with an i7 processor and a discrete NVIDIA GTX 1060 GPU with 6GB dedicated GDDR5 memory. The base 13.5-inch version comes with an i5 processor and no discrete GPU, or an i7 processor and an NVIDIA GTX 1050 discrete GPU with 2GB dedicated DDR5 memory. Specs at a glance: Microsoft Surface Book 2 13.5 base screen 3000 x 2013.5 267 ppi 10-point capacitive pixel sense touchscreen OS Windows 10 Pro CPU Intel 7th generation Core i7 7300U Intel 8th generation Core i7 8650U RAM 8GB 1866 MHz LPDDR3 16GB 1866 MHz LPDDR3 GPU Intel UHD graphics 620 Intel UHD graphics 620 NVIDIA GTX 1050 with 2GB GDDR5 SSD 256GB PCIe 1TB PCIe networking 802.11 ACABGN with 2x2 MIMO antennas, Bluetooth 4.1 ports, 2 USB 3.1 Generation 1 Type A, 1 USB 3.1 Generation 1 Type A with power delivery, SD, 3.5mm headset cameras, rear 8MP autofocus, 1080p video, front 5MP, 1080p video, infrared facial recognition, size 12.3 x 9.14 x 0.510.90 312 x 232 x 1323mm 12.3 x 9.14 x 0.590.90 312 x 232 x 1323mm weight 3.38 pounds 1.53 kilograms 3.62 pounds 1.64 kilograms battery unknown warranty 1 year price $1,499 $2,999 senses ambient light sensor accelerometer gyroscope magnetometer charger 39W95W other features support Surface Pen Surface Dial TPM 2.0 in almost every way. The new Surface Books look and act identical to the first generation systems, they're just larger in the 15-inch guise. But they retain the same hybrid identity. The screen portion contains its own battery and all the core components and can be detached to operate as a standalone tablet. The base includes the battery, the discrete GPU, and the keyboard. The new, larger screen has required some internal re-engineering of the Surface Book's hinge and latching mechanism to make them a little stiffer and stronger, but they look virtually identical. The hinge still unrolls to ensure the system remains balanced, and the latching mechanism is still a software-controlled, electrically actuated thing. The review system Microsoft supplied is a top-spec 15-inch model that packs an i7 8550U processor, 16GB RAM, 1TB SSD, and a GeForce GTX 1060 GPU with 6GB dedicated GDDR5 memory. It's a little extraordinary. Because of the greater portability they confer, especially in cramped situations like sitting in the back of a plane, I tend to prefer laptops around the 13-inch size. A 15-inch system feels big, but as 15-inch laptops go, the Surface Book 2 is a pretty sleek example of the type. It's a small amount heavier than the 15-inch MacBook Pro and a little thicker at the hinge end. But overall, this is a very respectable device, size-wise. A vast expanse of tablet still, tearing that screen off and using it as a tablet feels very strange. 15 inches is truly an enormous screen for a tablet. This is a monster tablet. Yet every time I pick it up, it surprises me. The tablet weighs 0.8 kilograms, 1.8 pounds, and, for something with such a large screen, that feels very light. It's thin, at about 8mm 0.3 inches, but yet it packs in an i7 processor, RAM, storage, and a battery. The touchscreen is up to Microsoft's usual high standards. It's sensitive, its parallax error is minute with each iteration of Surface. Microsoft has made the entire screen and touch sensor assembly thinner to ensure that the pen tip is closer to the actual pixels, and Surface Book 2 continues this pattern, and it seems to respond well to touch and pen. In large, this is really an enormous tablet. I'm no artist, and I'm not much of a tablet user. While I love the hybrid form factor, I love it for the same reason that I love the 360-degree hinge. I like to make the system an inverted V for watching movies and similar activities when flying, and I like to wrap the screen around all the way to turn the thing into a chunky tablet for watching movies in bed. As such, I don't have any particularly strong feelings about this 15-inch tablet. It's an engineering marvel, without a doubt. But is it useful for me? No. I would flip the screen around, but I can't imagine ever using it detached from the base. Enlarge, put the screen on backwards, and Microsoft calls it Studio Mode. It's at a similar angle to the even larger Surface Studio. When introducing the Surface Book 2, Microsoft spoke extensively about the appeal the flexible machine had for creative, artistic users, and, in particular, users for whom the pen is not merely an optional extra but a core part of the value proposition. For them, the 15-inch tablet represents a member of a continuum. It's one of a family of tablets, 12.3 inches in the Surface Pro, 13.5 and 15 inches in the Surface Book 2, and 28 inches for the Surface Studio. Those all support the same pens, and they all support Microsoft's Surface Dial accessory. If you want the larger workspace that the 15-inch tablet offers, then the Surface Book 2 is likely to appeal. Otherwise, the Surface Book 2 is really very similar to its predecessor. That's good in lots of ways but disappointing in others. The good: this is a high-quality, well-built machine. The tablet, whether 13.5-inch or 15-inch, is remarkably thin considering everything that goes into it. The screen is bright and beautiful, and its Windows Hello facial recognition is a quick and convenient way of logging into Windows. The keyboard action is crisp and solid. The keyboard backlight can render the keys unreadable in some situations thanks to white illumination and gray keycaps, and the key layout is reasonable, albeit lacking in dedicated page navigation keys. The 15-inch model gives no advantage here, although it in principle offers more space for the keyboard, and hence more keys. It is identical to the 13.5-inch version. Similarly, the touchpad is large, smooth, and precise. It's a precision touchpad, so it supports the range of Windows 10 multi-touch gestures, and it will offer more as Microsoft adds new gestures to the operating system. As such, the core laptop experience is nailed by the Surface Book 2. The fancy hinge does somewhat limit how far the screen can be tilted back. Even regular, non-360-degree hinges usually offer a bit more freedom in the screen angle than the Surface Book 2. From my more extensive usage of the first-generation system, this is occasionally an annoyance, particularly when trying to show other people things on my screen, but it's not something I run into daily. But overall, you can use the Surface Book 2 as if it were just a regular touchscreen laptop without ever having to think about the detachable screen. That's a good thing, the detachable screen isn't making the Surface Book 2 any less of a laptop. Page 2. As for disappointing similarities to the first generation, look to the input-output selection. Surface Book 2 has a slightly different array from the first generation. It retains the pair of USB Type-A ports and the SD card reader on the left, and it retains the proprietary Surface Connect charging DIC port, but it replaces the mini display port with a single USB Type-A port. The bad news is that this is not a Thunderbolt 3 port. It does USB 3.1 Generation 1, that's 5 GBs, not the 10 GBs of Generation 2. It supports power delivery to charge the system, and it supports the DisplayPort alternate mode, so it can work as a display output just as the mini DisplayPort does in the original Surface Book. But it can't connect to high-speed disk arrays, external GPUs, or third-party docking stations. With the original Surface Book, the lack of Thunderbolt 3 was a little annoying. It's a clever, forward-looking port that's tremendously versatile, but Thunderbolt 3 was brand new when the Surface Book was released, and the Surface Book already packed in enough novelty, the detachable GPU, the Skylake processor, that I can understand Microsoft not wanting to jump on Thunderbolt 3 at the same time. But 2 years down the line, we think that every premium laptop should have Thunderbolt 3. Enlarge the USB Type-A port, adjacent to the Surface Connect port. I'm not going to pretend that every Surface Book 2 user is going to suffer from the lack of Thunderbolt 3. Except for the base 13.5-inch system, the Surface Book 2s all come with a discrete GPU, for example, so at least for now, the external GPU use case is of limited appeal. That might change, say, 2 or 3 years down the line, but right now it's probably not a huge market. Thunderbolt 3 monitors and docks are trickling onto the market and are likely to become more common. Some fields, such as video production, already make regular use of Thunderbolt 3 RAID arrays to offer high-performance storage and shipping of hundreds and thousands of gigabytes of video data. These are fields where I think the Surface Book 2 ought to be a good fit. But it isn't. The point here is not that everyone is going to rush out and buy an array of Thunderbolt 3 peripherals. But these are expensive machines, costing up to $3,299. They're going head-to-head with Apple's MacBook Pros. At the event announcing the systems, Microsoft even made this comparison explicitly. And they're designed with at least a nod toward creative users. Again, this is direct from the horse's mouth. To rule out the use of these peripherals, to implicitly state we want no part of a Thunderbolt-enriched future, to tell certain classes of user we're not interested in your usage scenario, even though our hardware would otherwise be a great match, feels deeply unsatisfactory to me. The Surface Book 2's peers support Thunderbolt. There are usage scenarios that make sense with Thunderbolt, and damn it, a machine that can cost more than $3,000 needs to be more forward-looking than this. Adding insult to injury, there are some odd shortcomings of the system. I think it should be able to drive a pair of 4K displays. With a GTX 1060 it should certainly have enough display horsepower. One 4K display on the Type-A port and a second on the dock, or two on the dock as it has two DisplayPort ports of its own is a configuration I think should work, but people I trust who've tested this say that it can only manage this at a 30Hz refresh rate and only when using the pair of ports dock. Connecting to the dock and Type-A simultaneously resulted in no output over the Type-A port at all. With Thunderbolt 3, it should be a straightforward matter to chain two 4K displays at 60Hz off the Type-A port. Worst case, you'd need a splitter like this, but Thunderbolt 3 has the bandwidth to support this kind of thing. Maybe next year's update will make the leap. Blistering performance on the inside. The important changes are, of course, the changes to the processor and the GPU. Apart from the obvious tweaks, much better GPU, latest generation Intel processor with more threads and more cores. Some re-engineering of the tablet portion has occurred. The 13-inch Surface Book 2 has a fanless tablet. The processors have a standard thermal design powered TDP of 15W, meaning that for sustained operation at its normal clock speeds it needs a cooling system that can dissipate 15W. Microsoft insists that it has provided just this. The 13-inch Surface Book 2 tablet can draw a sustained 15W indefinitely. The 15-inch system has a fan in its tablet. Why does the larger system with more heat surface area with which to dissipate heat have a fan? Because in the 15-inch version, the processor is set to be allowed to draw more than a sustained 15W. Intel allows as much as 25W given a suitable cooling system, meaning that the 15-inch machines should run a bit faster than the smaller siblings despite having the same processor models. The Surface Book 2 is the second Kaby Lake system we've tested. The HP Spectre 13 was the first, and, with this second system, we're starting to get a better understanding of what Kaby Lake means for performance. The story with Kaby Lake is a little complex. The big improvement it makes, relative to Kaby Lake, is the doubling of cores and threads from 2 and 4 to 4 and 8 respectively. But the new chips are built on a very similar manufacturing process. They're both 14 nanometers chips and have the same TDP, 15W. One might expect a doubled core count with an unchanged power envelope to increase power draw, and it does. To make up for this, the base clock speed of the processors is sharply down. The i7-8650U, presently the top-spec Kaby Lake processor, has a base clock speed of 1.9 GHz. Its predecessor equivalent, the i7-7600U, has a base clock speed of 2.8 GHz. The difference, of course, is that the new chip can run 4 cores at that 1.9 GHz. The old chip could only run 2 at its 2.80 GHz. The single-core turbo for the Kaby Lake is 4.2 GHz, compared to 3.9 GHz for the older Kaby Lake. In principle, this means that the Kaby Lakers should keep their edge over the older chips, but there are some areas that are a little less clear. In the past, for quad-core chips Intel would publish turbo boost speeds for 1, 2, and 4 cores. Now the company only supplies a base speed and a turbo speed, creating this zone of unclarity when it comes to the torque or performance. Do the new chips have a higher torque or boost than the old ones with the higher single-core boost? It seems likely that they do, but Intel's reluctance to actually say so is unhelpful, if not actively misleading. What we see in practice is that for single-threaded workloads, the i7-8650U is a little faster than the i7-7600U, though not so much that you'd be likely to notice the difference in normal usage. For multi-threaded workloads, the 2 extra cores and 4 extra threads let the new chip pull far ahead of the old one. In some workloads, such as multi-threaded rendering in Cinebench, the new chip is close to twice the speed of the old one. On the basis of these numbers, then, the KB Laker seems to give better multi-threaded performance with no real downside, though that high power capacity is probably helpful. In a system that was constrained to the standard 15W, the extra power burned by those extra cores could exert more of a negative influence in single-threaded workloads. No concerns on the GPU side of things, however. The GeForce GTX 1060 spanks the 965M found in the Surface Book with performance base. This is a very fast GPU. While this system isn't being built as a gaming laptop, it can undoubtedly hold its own against most representatives of the class, especially when compared to machines of a comparable size and weight. As a nod to this and also virtual reality, the 15-inch version, though oddly not the 13-inch, has an integrated wireless controller for Xbox One gamepads in addition to Bluetooth. The sequential read performance of the SSD is also quite astonishing, though its other performance numbers are more typical. Battery life is good too, with a 67 watt-hours battery in the base and a 23 watt-hours battery in the tablet. There's a lot of battery in this thing. The long life isn't too much of a surprise. Of course, fire up that GPU and the story is very different. You can drain the machine in under 2 hours if you really want to. Inexplicable shortcomings, and this brings up a rather peculiar, surprising issue. The supplied power adapter can deliver 95W of power. The Surface Dock 2 can deliver around 90W. Under heavy load, however, the Surface Book 2 can draw more than 95W. How does it do this? Simple. It supplements the power it's pulling from the wall with the power in the batteries. If you're running an intensive game, or punishing benchmark such as 3D Mark's Time Spy, the battery in the base will slowly drain even when the Surface Book 2 is plugged in. Once the base battery gets low enough, the discrete GPU will be turned off. This is surprising. I could easily imagine packing up the laptop after a gaming session and assuming it'll be fully charged. After all, it has been plugged into the wall, only to discover that the battery is nearly empty. What I don't understand here is why Microsoft's charges are underspecified. The processor can draw 25W in its high-power mode. It can even burst to 35W for very short periods depending on which variant of the 1060 Microsoft is using. That can draw either 80W or 70W for the lower power Max-Q variant. So that's as much as a sustained 105W just for the two processors. To that you need to add the screen, memory, SSD, and all the other bits and pieces in the system. In short, this is a machine that should have shipped with a charger of maybe around 150W. At the very least, it should provide enough power to keep the batteries from discharging when under heavy load, and, frankly, I think it should be possible to charge the batteries even during gaming. But with the charger Microsoft has supplied, there's simply no way of doing that. If I were to hazard a guess, I wonder if 100W or thereabouts is the upper limit to Microsoft's proprietary Surface Connect port, and Microsoft chose to keep the port unmodified to provide continued compatibility with the Surface Dock rather than upgrade it to handle the demands of the new machine. If that hunch is correct, I think this was the wrong choice. Not least because someone dropping $2,499 or more on the system can probably spring for a new, high-power Surface Dock if they really have to. The CPU being in the screen also means that, at least under heavy processor load, the system never really feels hot. The hot part simply isn't on your lap or under your hands, it's in the screen. The base can get warm under sustained GPU load, but in my use it never got offensively toasty. And while both tablet and base have fans, the only time I heard them was under intensive CPU and GPU loads. But when I did hear them. They were very loud indeed. It's a better Surface Book and large. The screen can be put on backwards, which can be convenient in the kitchen or when watching a movie on a plane. The Surface Book 2 is a powerful, capable computer. I loved the design of the Surface Book when it was introduced, and I still love it now. Its hybrid form factor remains flexible and effective, and while a 15-inch tablet feels more than a little extraordinary, the way Microsoft has pulled it off almost makes me wish I had some reason to actually use it. The size, weight, and thickness make it a delight. If nothing else, it's an engineering marvel. Using high-end GPUs rather than the mid-range chips found in the first-generation systems is an unambiguous improvement that arguably transforms the machines. The first generation had GPUs that were faster than integrated graphics, sure, but I'm not sure they necessarily lit up any major new usage scenarios. They were still too weak, for example, for gaming or VR development. That's not the case this time around. These GPUs have vast improvements on the integrated GPUs, making the new Surface Books practical for all kinds of workloads where integrated graphics would cut it. Microsoft has undoubtedly built a better Surface Book. What it hasn't done, I think, is look at the rest of the market to ensure that it has built a better laptop. I just can't get over the lack of Thunderbolt 3. The 15-inch MacBook Pro has Thunderbolt 3. Dell's XPS 15 has Thunderbolt 3. The 15-inch HP Spectre X360 has Thunderbolt 3. The Lenovo ThinkPad P51s has Thunderbolt 3. The 14-inch Razer Blade has Thunderbolt 3. These are all systems operating in more or less the same space as the Surface Book 2 with 14 or 15-inch screens, discrete GPUs, and either dual or quad-core processors. They're all a refresh cycle behind the Surface Book 2. They're all Kaby Lake machines, though I'd expect most of them to receive Kaby Lake revisions at some point, and yet they all managed to pack in Thunderbolt 3. With even the cheapest 15-inch Surface Book 2 costing $2,499, this omission just isn't good enough. Surface Book 2 shouldn't just be better than its predecessor, it should be better than what the other PC makers are shipping. If the machine had the future-proofing and additional versatility that Thunderbolt 3 offered, I could recommend it without reservation, even with the power supply annoyance. If you genuinely value the ability to use the Surface Book 2 as a true tablet, and its ability to transform is a continuing delight, tearing that screen off remains cool even after 2 years, then the new model will serve you well. If you simply must have a 15-inch discrete graphics, high-performance laptop right now, the Surface Book 2 certainly has performance in spades and little in the way of competition. But if you're happy to wait for the rest of the market to make its Kaby Lake refreshes, if you think a 360-degree hinge offers enough flexibility, or if you don't need your machine to become a true tablet, I'd be very inclined to sit this one out and see what other PC companies do with the new Intel chips. A system this expensive needs to be more forward-looking. The form factor is still exciting. It's hard to believe that the tablet is as thin and light as it is. Great performance, great battery life. Microsoft continues to nail the basics. Keyboard, touchpad, screen are all very pleasant. The bad. A system this powerful should be able to drive external 4K screens without issue. The underpowered charger is a very peculiar decision and will catch people out. The array of ports and connectors is limiting. The ugly, and the lack of Thunderbolt 3 is inexcusable at this price and market positioning.